Hello and welcome to another episode of Doug Formative. On today's episode, I'm going to show you how to recreate this name inside of an elliptical shape here in Inkscape. This was another sketch that I found from years ago, and I thought it would make for a great tutorial so you could see how you could take text and cut it out of a shape. I'm going to show you two different ways that you can do this. First, we're going to recreate the image as it is, and then second, I'm going to show you how you can use a text that you've typed out. So if you want to use your own name, you could type your name out and follow along and recreate this the same design. Alright, so first of all, we want to import the original sketch into Inkscape, and we're going to do that by going to File, Import, and mine is saved to the desktop, so I'm going to click on Desktop, and then here's the design right here, Name Design. So you double click on the image, click OK, and my scanner scanned the entire scanner bed instead of just the piece of paper here itself. But we can isolate just the image that we're going to be working with by going over here to our rectangles tool. Then we can click and drag over just that area we're going to be working with. And just to double check, we can go down to our fill and stroke menu, and if you don't see your fill and stroke menu, you can come up here and click on this little square with the paintbrush in it, and then you'll get your fill and stroke menu. And now we want to lower the opacity just to make sure that we've covered the entire design here. Now we want to go to our selector tool by clicking on this arrow or hitting S on the keyboard, holding shift, clicking anywhere on the rest of this image here, so both are selected. Then we're going to go to Object, Clip, and Set. And now we only have to worry about looking at this image right here. Next thing we want to do is rotate it so it's right side up. So you just click on it one more time to get your rotation handles, hold Control, and click on one of the corners and drag it until it's right side up like that. Now we can click on it again, hold Control, click, and drag it out, just to make it a little bit bigger so we can see what we're working with here. And I want to put this sketch on its own separate layer so we're not accidentally messing with it while we're working. And if you can see right here, we're on layer 1. I want to lower the opacity so we can see what we're doing a little bit better. So come over here to our fill and stroke menu, drag the opacity down to about, I would say about 59, 60, whatever, and that's good, so we can still see the lines that we need to work with. And then we're going to lock this layer by clicking on this little lock icon right here, and create a new layer by coming up here, clicking on Layer, Add Layer, and then Add. You don't have to worry about changing the name, it doesn't really matter. Alright, so we are ready to get started. The first thing that we want to do is create an elliptical shape that matches this shape here. As you can see, this was hand drawn. It wasn't, there was no tools or anything used, so it's not perfect. We just want to get as close as possible. So let's click on our elliptical shape here. Click and just drag out a shape that looks as close to the original as possible. Now we want to grab our selector tool, click on this guy again to get our rotation handles, and then click and drag it to try to match that same angle. And then you can click and move it around as much as you need to. Now the key here is you want to try to get this shape to be outside of that blue outline that we have here. So if we need to increase the height of the ellipse, we can do that. So if you notice, every time you click, you get either the scaling handles, click again, and you get your rotation handles. So we want our scaling handles, and we're going to click down here and drag that one down. And now we're getting closer to what we're going to need, just to make it easier to work with. And that's looking pretty good, I think. You know, we want to be as close to the top and the bottom of the letters as possible before we start proceeding to the next step. And I think we are right where we need to be. Now, like I said before, we're going to be cutting the letters out of this elliptical shape. Now I'm going to show you the first way to do this. We're going to grab our Bezier pen by hitting B on the keyboard, or coming over here and clicking on this blue pen over here. And what we want to do is make sure that our snapping is enabled. If you go over here, you see enable snapping. That will be highlighted in blue. And then you want to make sure this one, snap to paths, is selected. And that will allow you to click exactly on the edge of this ellipse that we created. Now what we want to do is go ahead and click on that path, and then you want to click just on different portions where the letter itself intersects with the outside of the oval shape. So we're going to click there, we're going to click here, and what you want to try to do is click to where the shape is inside of that original blue outline here. And don't worry about it being perfect, because we're going to go back and make whatever adjustments we need to. Now you notice I'm only clicking on these areas where it comes to a point, and there's a reason for that. So same thing here, just follow that curve and, you know, try to match where it would be here, and then we're going to come to here and just trace this letter G as best as we can. You know, and when you get to this point, you want to make sure that nothing is overlapping each other. So we're going to have to create some extra nodes temporarily. So we're just going to click like that. And if you're on a desktop, you can click in on the mouse wheel to drag this down to where you can see where you're working. We'll just click here, here, there. All these corner areas. Handle the path. We're going to come into here, come to this point down here. Now we can do this and then click out there like that. And then when you get to this area here, we want to make sure that this U has this shape here, because the top right here is actually supposed to emulate the shape of this oval. So this part in the original sketch is not as high as it needs to be. So let's draw the U like it's actually there, and just get as close as you can to the bottom portion here, and then just come up, back up to the path. Come over here, click on the path, and just continue clicking on each of these corners. Now there's that, and there's that. Now, as you can see, it's a pretty crude outline of the original lettering. But what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into one solid object, not just the outline. And how we're going to do that is we're going to come over here to our fill and stroke menu, click on the stroke paint tab, and then click on this X so there's no paint. Go to the fill tab, and then click on this box that says flat color. So that turns this into a solid object with the path that we created. And now we want to lower the opacity so we can see what's going on underneath it by clicking down here. I would go at least halfway, and in order to make it a little bit easier to see, we can make that another color so we have more contrast. Now the next step, let's go ahead and grab our selector tool. So this thing is still selected, and we want to turn this into a path by going up here to path, object to path, and then let's go over here and select our edit paths by nodes tool. And now what we want to do, you can see all these spots. These are all the spots where you click to create a new line, and those are all areas that we can adjust the shape of the line and where the corners are, and we can get this thing to the same exact shape as we need it to be. So let's start with the top of the D over here, hold Control on the keyboard, and then scroll up on the mouse wheel so we can get a better idea of what we're doing here. Now any area that's over here at the top of a letter where it's going to be cut out of the ellipse, we can just click the line, just hover over it until you see the hand, click, and then you can just drag that up. It doesn't have to be right on the line. And the lines on the inside, we want to click and drag these to try to match that shape and try to stay inside of that blue outline that we have there. And if you have to move a node, you can, but just keep in mind that the ellipse doesn't match the original outline 100%. So we're gonna have to do a little bit of creativity here. So let's grab this line down here and just click and drag this out, just trying to match that same curve. And if for some reason it's not giving you that same curve that you have before, you can click on the node and it'll give you these handles. So here's this handle here, and that one adjusts this line up here. So you can click and drag that out. Same thing with over here. This handle will affect this line here. This one will affect this up here. So if you click and drag it in, it will change the curve. And like I said, it doesn't have to match it perfectly. You can make it look, however you want. It doesn't matter. The whole point of doing this in Inkscape is you can improve upon the original sketch, because the sketch obviously isn't perfect. So now let's go down here to this line, click, and just drag that out so it goes past the outline of the ellipse. Click and drag this one and try to match that shape. And you don't have to spend a whole lot of time making this perfect, because you can go back, which we're gonna do, and adjust all of these lines again if you don't like the way that they turn out. So just get as close as you can, as long as you're happy with the way that it looks at this point. That's the important thing. Over here, this is a little bit tricky. That's where you want to click on the node to get your handle, click and drag that in, and it doesn't have to match that perfectly, but you can try to get close if you like that stylized look of the letter U here. We can do this one while we're over here. And when you have two nodes like this, what you could do is you can click and drag over both of those, and you can make those smooth nodes by clicking on that button right there. Make selected nodes smooth. And what that does is it makes the handles a straight bar, and it gives you more of a smooth curve to work with. See, now you don't have those weird angles that we had there before. That looks a lot better than it did before. We can come up here, click and drag that curve out, click and drag this one up, click in on the mouse wheel to drag this thing over, and we're just gonna finish this thing off. Here we go again. We're going to want to make those smooth, both of those smooth, by highlighting them, clicking on that. And if you want to move two nodes at the same time, you can, by selecting both of them. And if you move one, it will move the other as well. And I want to make sure that these angles here that I have for each letter, I want to try to be as consistent as possible with those angles at least. But we can go back and adjust them later on if need be. So we can drag that back in a little bit, add a little bit of a we can bring this node in. That way we can add this little bit of a curve to the G here. Drag that node down. And I want to try to match this angle with that angle there. Make this one a little bit of a curve. Same thing with this. Let's do this top one first. And I want to make this one smooth. And you don't have to just click and drag over two nodes to select them. You can click on one and then you can hold shift and click on another, and then you can click on that. And then sometimes you run into this issue where the handle tries to click onto that path, and if we turn off snapping, then that won't be an issue. And we can move these nodes around, we can move the handles wherever we need them to be, and then you don't have to worry about them clicking onto a path that we don't want them to. And I want this to be curved out too. I want to drag this one out a little bit. You know, and that's looking a little bit more like what I want. I think this portion of the G is a little bit thicker than I would like. So I'm gonna select both those nodes and I'm gonna drag them down a little bit, just so the width is a little bit closer to the rest of the letters. Okay, and we are getting somewhere. Okay, I need to get rid of this node here so I can make that into a curve. Click and drag this one up. Same thing with this. And we got that curve that we need to make. Alright, now once you're happy with the outline of the letters, the next step is over here. I have to get rid of these, the inner portions of the letters. So for the letter D and the letter O, I need to cut those portions out because I need that area to remain part of the ellipse shape. So for the D, we can go ahead and grab our Bezier pen again by hitting B on the keyboard and then trying to stay inside of the letter. Try to hug the shape of that blue outline. But because the original shape goes a little bit lower, just pay attention to how far in from the outer edge this is and try to match that same distance. So let's just create 4 nodes here by doing that and then reconnecting them like that. And then like we did before, let's go ahead and fill it in by clicking flat color, and then on stroke paint click the X to eliminate the outline. Now let's go ahead and change the color of this to like blue so we can see what we're doing, and lower the opacity about halfway. Grab our grab our selector tool and then change this into a path by going to path, object to path, and then go to our edit paths by nodes tool and do exactly like what we did before and try to recreate that same outline that we have. Now once you've created these curves over here on the outside, you don't need these corners here. So you can delete that one, and we can click and delete that one too. And now you can just grab your handles and then create that inner portion of the letter D. And once again, it doesn't have to be perfect because you can always go back and adjust it later on. Now once you're finished with that shape, hit the letter S on your keyboard to grab your selector tool, hold shift, and click on this orange shape. Now you're going to go to Path, Difference. And as you can see, we cut that area of the letter D out. We want to do the exact same thing to the O right here. So we'll just go to our Ellipse tool, click and drag an elliptical shape, try to get it as close to that same shape as possible. Hit S on the keyboard to get our selector tool, click on the image again, click one of these rotation handles, and just try to match that angle as best as possible. And then click on it again if you need to adjust the size. And that's about as close as we really need to get. Now we want to hold shift, click on the orange shape again, go to Path, Difference. And now, as you can see, we have the basic shape of the letters that we need. Now in order to cut this out of the ellipse shape, with that selected, we're going to hold shift, click on the black ellipse shape, and Path, Difference. Now you can see we have that name cut out of the elliptical shape. And we don't need the sketch in the background anymore. So what we can do is just make it invisible. So we can come down here, go to layer 1, we can unlock it, and then we can just click on the little eyeball there, and that turns the visibility off. So now you can see what we did. We have the name cut out of the ellipse. Now I notice here we've got a little portion left over, and that's very easy to get rid of. What we can do is just grab our rectangle shape, and we can just click and drag over it. Hold on. Oops, we're not on layer 2. We need to go back to layer 2 first. Alright, now we can click and just create a shape that hovers just over that. Now we can grab our selector tool, hold shift, click on anywhere on this object we have here, and then go to Path, Difference, and it's gone. So no worries, it's a very simple fix. Now the next thing we can do is we can get our outline, our blue outline like we had before. Now since this is one solid object, all we have to do is hold shift and click on any color down here in the palette to create the outline that we want. Now I like that blue outline, so let's click and drag over to these different shades of blue, and I'm going to do something like that one. I think that's a pretty good color. So hold shift, click on that one, and there we go. You have our outline that's tracing the shape that we created. Now if for some reason when you hold shift and click on a color, it gives you some weird funky outline, or it's way too thick, or you get this big colored blob, come over here to your stroke style menu and double check the width. Because the width may be set to like something ridiculously high, and all you have to do is come over here and type in a different number. I usually work in pixels, so you can change that from this drop down menu here. So if I wanted a thicker outline, I could just go a little bit at a time. Maybe I want that to be a 5 instead of a 3. Just depending on your own personal preference. I think 5 looks pretty cool, but I think 3 was okay, so I'm going to change it back to 3. And what you could do is go back to your Edit Paths by Nodes tool, and then you can make any subtle adjustments that you want to make to each of these letters. If you wanted to bring this up, you could. If you wanted to adjust the nodes and then change the angle that this comes out, you can do whatever you want to do to to make it look exactly the way that you want it to. You can get rid of nodes if you don't need them anymore. And just, you know, smooth everything out. So you have, you know, a bunch of options to personalize your name and just, you know, make it look exactly the way that you want it to look. And let's go back to our selector tool, click off of it, you know, and I'm liking the way that that's looking so far. You know, I could sit here and mess with each section of the letters all day long if I wanted to, but you know, it's not really necessary for the sake of this tutorial. There's one more node that looks like I need to get rid of, so I'm going to click on that and hit delete and grab this handle here and just drag it back up. You know, so as you can see, the letters are not perfect, but they have character, and I think it's just a cool looking effect. Now the last thing that we need to do is click and drag over the entire thing, and then in our fill and stroke menu, we want to just make sure the opacity is dragged all the way up, so you can see what it looks like with that contrast with the black ellipse and the blue outline. Okay, and one last thing that we could do, you know, just to give it another effect if you wanted to. With this selected, hold Control and hit D on your keyboard to duplicate it. And now, with that selected, the new image selected, let's go to Stroke Paint, click on the X to get rid of the outline, and now come down here to where it says Blur, and let's add a blur by clicking the up arrow. I would go about a 3, I think, and then we're going to click and drag the blur just down and to the left a little bit. And then we want to come up here and select this lower selection to bottom. So click on that. Then as you can see, it gives this shadow. It's like a drop shadow underneath the original design. So you click off of that image and it just makes it look like it's 3D, like it's popping off of the page. So that's just one more dimension that you could add to this image. So let's go ahead and you could click and drag over it and just move it off to the side if you want. I don't really need that anymore. So what we can do, click our ellipses tool and just create an ellipse. And now we can lower the opacity, and you can make the ellipse whatever shape you want. You know, I'm okay with that shape right there. Now you can grab your text tool and create whatever text you want. If you want to use your name, you can. You know, I'll just type my name, and I'm not a big fan of that font, so I'm going to come up here just choose a different font, preferably something bold. And if you don't have a font that really appeals to you, you can get a new font by going to dafont.com. That's DAFONT.com. I'll post a link in the description down below, so you can download some free fonts that you can install into Inkscape. And that one looks pretty good. I think I'll go ahead and use that one. It's a nice bold font. So I'm going to grab my selector tool, hold Control, I'm going to click and drag this out, and I want to make it a little bit bigger than the ellipse. But before I do anything by cutting it into the ellipse shape, I want to overlap the letters. So how we can do that is we're going to change this into a path by going to Path, Object to Path, then go to Object and click Ungroup. Now we can manipulate these letters individually. So I'm going to click on the letter D. I want to drag this out so I have a good starting point. Now you just click off somewhere off to the side so nothing is selected. Now I'm going to click on the letter D, and then I want to make whatever adjustments I need to make to this letter. I'm not going to hold Control because I want to stretch the letter out. Now I'm going to take the letter O and overlap it. Same thing with the letter U. You know, I want to make the U a little bit taller. And I don't have to make it exactly like the old design that I had. You know, click and drag the G in there. And if your text ends up being bigger than the ellipse, it's not a big deal. You can click and drag over all the letters, hold Control, and then click one of these arrows and drag it in so it fits inside of the elliptical shape. And then you can continue to edit each letter individually. You know, that's entirely up to you. And if you wanted to go a step further, you could highlight all the letters, click on it one more time, and then this handle that you have in the middle, not the corner handle, you can click and drag it up to give it like an angled look. But then obviously you'll have to rotate your ellipse shape to match. So you can select your ellipse shape, click on that, and then rotate it around. You know, to try to match that same angle. Now what we can do is click on any of the letters, hold Shift, and then click on the rest of them. And you want to turn that into a union by going up to Path, Union. Now hold Shift, click on the ellipse, go to Path, and click Difference. And now, as you can see, you have your name already cut out into that ellipse shape, just like we had before. And it goes a lot quicker. You know, it's entirely up to you. If you want to have something that has a little bit more character, you can do it the original way, the first way that I showed you. If you want something quick and fast and, you know, more perfect looking, then you can do it this way. You know, so once you've gotten to this point, you can add that outline like we had before. So if you want to make the ellipse black, you can select it and then come over here, click black, make sure the opacity is turned all the way up, and then add your outline. And then we don't have to pick blue. I can pick something else. Like I can do orange by holding Shift and clicking on the orange shape, and then it gives it an orange outline. And then we can go to our stroke style and increase the size to whatever it is that we want, you know. And you have the same effect, you know. And if you wanted to add that drop shadow, you could hold Control, hit D on the keyboard, come to Stroke Paint, turn that off, turn the blur up to about 3, click and drag it off to the side, and then click and drag that down to the bottom. So that's just a quicker way that you could create that same effect. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.